In last week's video, I asked the question if a group of 4 Helldivers could survive the events of Dead Space going up against the Necromorph Infestation, and since you guys liked that video so much, seriously, that video popped off. I was not expecting you guys to have that much interest in that topic, but since you guys loved that video so much, I thought I'd follow it up with something a bit similar, and I got a lot of comments requesting this topic, which is, can a fire team of 4 Helldivers survive a Xenomorph infestation? And just like with that last video, I can only talk about equipment and stratagems from the Freedom's Flame Warbond, which is the most recent one that's released, and before that. So if you're watching this video in the future and there's some new weapons and stuff, I just don't know about it. And besides that, if you guys end up enjoying this video or like this type of content, I have more videos on my channel that are very similar if you guys want to go check that out, and maybe consider dropping a like, subbing to the channel, doing all that stuff for me. Really helps my small channel be pushed more into the algorithm, and I can't thank you guys enough with how good my channel has been doing over these last couple of weeks. But without further ado, let's dive right into the topic. I think the best place to start is by talking about the Xenomorphs. After all, we have to really understand what enemies we're putting these Helldivers up against. And there's a lot of Xenomorph variants that are exclusive to comics or video games that a lot of you guys may not be aware of, since in most of the films they kind of just show you one form of Xenomorph. So I'll kind of go down a list of talking about different variants and give brief descriptions for each of them so you kind of have a general idea of how they work. The first Xenomorph we have to talk about is the drone, because it is your standard classic Xenomorph that you guys all know and all love. It's the one from the original film and from Aliens, and while they're not physically overpowered or anything, they're pretty fast, pretty agile, they can climb on walls and on ceilings, they use ambush tactics sometimes, and what they lack in physical strength, they make up for in just massive amounts of numbers. These are the most common Xenomorphs in any hive. Next up on the list, we have the Burster, and these guys' entire purpose is to just make a beeline straight for the enemy, just charge you down, so that when they die, they just explode into a puff of acid. They just spray acid everywhere on death, and that's their entire purpose. They're basically just like a kamikaze. Next up on the list, we have the Prowler, and these guys aren't too dissimilar from your standard Xenomorph drone. They're slightly stronger, slightly bigger, they have a reddish tint to them, and they tend to like to stay put in one place, typically like a dark corner of a room, or a vent, or a ceiling, something where you're not going to expect them or see them easily, and they're just going to wait for their prey to walk right next to them so that they can ambush them and pounce on them at the most opportune time. There's also the Spitters, which, as their name implies, allows them to spit acid from very long distances. These guys typically like to stay at a distance from their enemies. They're not going to rush you down and attack you with melee strikes or anything like that. And their entire purpose is to basically just be a ranged variant. The Xenomorph Warrior is basically just a bigger, stronger, faster, and more durable drone. They typically walk on 2 legs instead of 4, and just any stat you could imagine is just higher for them in comparison to their more common drone counterparts, but they don't have any special abilities like some of the other variants. The Xenomorph Crusher is one of the strongest Xenomorph variants. It has a massive head crest which is heavily armored, and I'm gonna be real, it's literally just the Xenomorph equivalent of a Charger from Helldivers. It attacks the exact same way, and it behaves the exact same way. The only real difference is that a Charger is pretty much armored head to toe, whereas the Crusher is really only heavily armored around its head crest. However, they have been shown to be able to tussle with some armored vehicles to some degree. Next, we have the Praetorians. These guys are the Queen's Royal Guard and are literally just smaller versions of the Queen herself. They don't have any special abilities or anything, but they are the second strongest Xenomorph in the hive. And finally, we have the Queen herself, which I'm sure all of you guys have seen Aliens. I'm sure I don't really have to give too much of an explanation for her.
Fuck no, baby!
And now that we have a good understanding of the foes we'll be putting the Helldivers up against, let's go ahead and talk about the first scenario, which I'll just be calling Scenario A. In this situation, the Helldivers are going to be completely unprepared. They don't know what a Xenomorph is, they know none about their abilities or their variants, and they didn't bring optimal equipment to deal with them. So whatever headcanon you want to make up in your head of how they got into this situation, let's just say maybe they were investigating what they thought to be a terminated planet and they just ended up stumbling across a Xenomorph hive or something. It's whatever you really want to make up. Now, obviously, the entire reason that Helldivers fight in the first place is to get rid of any Xenos that could pose a threat to Super Earth and humanity. So their mission here is going to be killing the Queen, wiping out all of the eggs, just completely decimating the place, leaving no survivors, and then extracting. Luckily for the Helldivers, almost all of their weapons fire armor-piercing rounds, and outside of the Queen, Praetorian, and Crusher variants, most Xenos are unarmored and were easily taken out by any weapon at the Colonial Marines' disposal. And as you come to see, the Helldivers' weaponry on average is far stronger than what the Colonial Marines had access to. Higher caliber weapons such as the anti-material rifle, or really any heavy stratagem weapon, should be able to take out any armored variant of Xenomorph within a few hits. However, there's just one really big problem, and that's going to be the acid blood. Helldivers, even in the opening of the game, are shown allowing terminated blood and guts to just rain all over them, and spewers which shoot acid can kill a Helldiver in seconds, meaning their armor probably isn't strong enough to withstand the infamously potent acid of the Xenos, which in the original film, a single drop could burn through multiple steel floors of the Nostromo. This problem gets even worse if any of the divers have explosive weapons, of which there are many, from the eruptor to the explosive crossbow, grenade pistol, or just really grenades in general. These weapons are only going to succeed in spraying acid all over the area, and couple this with the bursters, who are already a huge problem in this situation, and the divers are going to be making it rain like Drake at a high school dance, bro.
W's in the shot.
Not to mention the spitters that can cover them with acid from afar while the divers are distracted by the other Xenos. While the divers, even with unoptimal equipment, should have the firepower to take out just about any Xenomorph threat, I don't really see a way they survive the acid blood when having no knowledge of it, especially since we constantly see them covered in blood, both in the opening of the game and in-game itself. Now, maybe you can make the argument that they might be able to take off pieces of their armor before the acid touches their skin, which we also see done in the films, but that can only save them one time and they have to react fast enough. Even with doing this, without armor, they become even more susceptible to melee strikes. So all in all, I don't think the Helldivers could survive this scenario. Another thing to take note of is the setting of the hive. If it's on a space station or a ship where the divers can't use stratagems, then they definitely don't make it. None of their standard non-stratagem based weaponry will be strong enough to take out the stronger armored variants anyway, even if they somehow don't get taken out by acid, which I find to be extremely unlikely. Moving on to Scenario B, we're going to be giving the Helldivers full intel and optimal equipment. So they're going to know exactly what they're getting into. They're going to know about the acid blood, they're going to know about the different variants, and they're going to bring the right tools for the job this time. And for this section, I thought it would actually be fun to just straight up create a anti-Xenomorph fire team. By far the biggest weakness that the Xenomorphs have is fire. Ripley used a flamethrower to wipe out the hive in the finale of Aliens, and some of the Xenomorphs, like the one in Isolation, just straight up run away from open flames. Seriously, fire to a Xeno is like water to a cat. One spray will have them hitting the jets in the opposite direction at terminal fucking velocity. And for those that are brave enough to push through the flames, they're getting cooked. Literally. Luckily for the divers, they have access to an insane amount of flame-based weaponry. However, to make this interesting, I'm going to limit every weapon and stratagem to a single Helldiver. Otherwise, we could probably just equip all of them with the same thing, and that would just be very boring. Starting off with our first Helldiver, he's going to be focused on crowd control. His primary weapon will be the Cookout Incendiary Pump-Action Shotgun, which is a pretty fitting name because that's exactly what this battle is going to be turning into. They're going to be frying these Xenomorphs like fucking Popeye's chicken. All that's really missing is a dry-ass biscuit and some beans that gets your tummy twerking. His secondary will be the Crisper Mini Flamethrower because fire, and his throwables will be the G13 Incendiary Impact Grenades because, you know, fire. His stratagems will consist of the Orbital Laser, the Eagle Napalm Strike, which can create a wall of fire preventing Xenos from getting closer, the Flamethrower, because of course, and the Shield Generator, which will be extremely important, as not only will it protect the diver from their own flames, but from Xeno Acid as well. Next up, we have our second Helldiver, and just like the first, he's going to be focused on crowd control. These two will kind of work together to cover the rest of the team and to keep the swarm down as much as possible. His primary weapon will be the Breaker Incendiary Semi-Auto Shotgun, secondary will be the P19 Redeemer Full Auto Pistol, and his throwable will be the G12 High Explosive Grenade. His stratagems will consist of the Eagle Cluster Bomb, which rearms incredibly fast and is great for clearing out waves of smaller enemies, the M105 Stalwart Machine Gun, which has the firepower to rip apart any lesser Xeno variants while having a high fire rate and large magazine. He'll also have access to the Laser Guard Dog, which not only will be useful for trimming the swarm, but will also cover the diver during reloads and make it basically impossible for Xenomorphs to sneak up on him. And finally, he'll have the Incendiary Minefield, which can be used in tandem with the Napalm Airstrike, which will make getting close to the fire team incredibly difficult for the Xenos. Now, the third member of the team is going to focus on mid-tier Xenomorph variants. The real purpose of this member of the team is going to be using high caliber, high armor piercing rounds to take out variants like the Warriors or the Bursters before they can get anywhere near the fire team. So with that being said, his primary is the Penetrator Assault Rifle with higher AP rounds, secondary is the P113 Verdict High Caliber Pistol, and his throwable is the normal impact grenades. His stratagems will consist of the Anti-Material High Caliber Sniper Rifle, which should easily be able to take out Warriors, Spitters, Bursters, and any mid-tier Xeno variant from range. He'll also have the Liberator Guard Dog, as the same reasons we gave the Rover to the last diver. He'll also be equipped with a Gatling Sentry for weaker variants, as well as a Missile Sentry for more durable or armored variants like Warriors, Chargers, or Praetorians. Our fourth and final Helldiver will be the Queen Killer. Every single weapon and stratagem this member brings to the table is going to be used for taking out the most elite of elite Xenomorphs, the Praetorians, the Chargers, and most importantly, the Queen. His primary will be the R36 Eruptor Bolt Action Rifle, which fires explosive high armor piercing rounds. His secondary will be the SG-22 Bushwhacker Shotgun, capable of firing from all three barrels at once. And his throwable will be the Thermite Sticks, which burn at 2000 degrees Celsius and can even burn through armor. His stratagems will consist of the Orbital Rail Cannon Strike, 500 kilogram bomb, Spear Lock-on rocket launcher, and the Patriot Exosuit, which is equipped with a rocket launcher and Gatling gun. The first two divers are going to focus on crowd control and the weaker Xenos, being able to cover for each other and the rest of the team during reloads, while the third and fourth diver will focus on mid and elite tier Xeno variants with high armor piercing rounds and explosive weaponry. Weapons such as the Anti-Material Rifle can easily blow through moderately thick armor, and stratagems such as the Rail Cannon Strike, 500 kilogram bomb, or Spear are all capable of taking out Bile Titans, so they should have no issue with Praetorians or the Queen herself. So in conclusion, if the divers are unprepared, uninformed, or can't use stratagems, they more than likely don't survive. However, with the proper equipment and intel, the Helldivers should have a field day with the Xenomorphs. Physically, they're much weaker than the Terminids, with their only real trump card being their acid blood, which if the divers are aware of, will come prepared for. And with all of that being said, guys, let me know down in the comments what you think about the topic, as well as recommend me more video ideas. You guys have been killing it with the video ideas recently, and I cannot appreciate your support on the last couple videos enough. Seriously, you guys have been killing it with the likes, the subscribes, like all of that stuff, man. It feels really good to see. I appreciate you guys a ton, and I'll see you next time.